Are you looking to learn how to create simple and easy YMAPs for RedM? Well, you've come to the right place. In this tutorial, we're going to teach you how to use Spooner, its features, and how to save your creation as YMAPs for both your RedM server and others. Stick around because it's time to create. Howdy Cowpoke, Austin BMX here with DRB Studios. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new around here, welcome to the channel, where we teach you RedM development and basic game coding, as well as stream and tech product reviews and tutorials. If you're going to like this video, consider hitting the like button as it greatly helps out the channel, and of course, subscribe so you won't miss out on the next video. As mentioned before the intro, we're going to be going over Spooner, its features, and how to use its features to save your own YMAPs. If you do not have Spooner yet, I highly recommend picking it up. There's a link down in the description where to download from the creator, as well as you can use our server load, which includes Spooner and some other easy features. First, we need to explain what is Spooner. Spooner is a easy overlay program that allows you to import objects into your world, including vehicles and PEDs for different scenarios. We're going to be using its features to import objects into the world and then saving those objects as a YMAP, so then that particular little scene gets loaded into your server when a server starts. These can be as simple as creating little markets like you saw before the intro. You can create interiors, full buildings, or even just dress up a town with, I don't know, maybe pumpkins. So let's jump right into it so you guys can get creating. First off, we're going to go over the two basic menus of Spooner. As you can see on our screen right now, we are on the base menu of Spooner. This is the menu that shows the bottom of your screen after you hit the delete key to open up Spooner, and you're not highlighting any object in the game. As you can see, our cursor in the middle is white, meaning that we're not currently highlighting any object in the game. Now, there may be some kind of objects on the ground that we could highlight, or we could highlight this horse or this wagon. As you can see, it turns green and our menu changes. But for our base menu right now, it shows most of our cursor moving functions. Most of them are basically just like any other game. We have WASD to move around just like this. We can fly back and forth left and right just like that. We have space to go up and shift to go down. This is just basically moving our view right now. We also have the spawn menu, which is E, which will spawn whatever we have loaded into Spooner. We'll get into that here in more in the future. We have the spawn menu. We have the database, which shows everything we've already spawned in our current instance of opening Spooner. We have J to save databases. We have speed up and down, which you could see in our menu. It changes your speed. This allows you to move faster. If we put this way up here and then do this, see how much faster we're moving now. That is just to move around the world, not really made to build anything. You can actually turn it way down as well, so you can get stuff very, very fine-tuned and move stuff very slowly. The default is 10, so we'll just keep it right there. We also have focus mode on control. Those are two modes. We'll get into that more when we have some objects on the map. We have entity handles. That just kind of shows you basically stuff in the world. As you can see, it has some object things right here, but well, we don't really use that too much. We have help, which you're here for this video, so we are the help. We have delete, of course, just brings you in and out of Spooner, just like this, the delete button. And then we have hide controls. Hide controls, I don't use them very much. We may have a couple of YMAP builders on the server that use them, but I don't use Spooner very much, so I don't have the controls memorized, but you can hide the controls if you'd like. Now to start explaining, well, why you guys are here. How do I put an object on the map? How do I move it around? And how do I save it? Well, first, let's get into two basic things. First, we have the spawn menu and the database. One of the main things you want to do before you do any kind of YMAP is make sure your database is clear. This is so you don't have any remnants of an old YMAP in there from earlier in the day or anything like that, because you don't want to have any extra items in your YMAP when you export it, because that could create some issues. So the first thing we always want to do is hit X, open up our database. All we have right now is ourself, that is fine. If you see anything else in here, you want to hit delete all, just like that. Our main two buttons for spawning stuff is F and E. F brings up the spawn menu, which will allow us to select an object, and E spawns that object. If we hit the F menu right now, it brings up this small little menu here. We have 5 options: PEDs, vehicles, objects, prop sets, and pickups. Going through all these, of course, PEDs is any type of person or animal. Yes, you can spawn these, but you cannot save these in a YMAP. We can get into this more in a future video on how to create PEDs in your map. But you can spawn these for a scenario in Spooner to test a few things. We have vehicles, which is a full-on drivable vehicle. These could be wagons, boats, or hot air balloons. We have objects, which we're going to use mostly in this video, which is thousands of spawnable objects in this game. We have prop sets, which are larger group of objects, which you could use to spawn larger groups of things like camps or even prop sets from vehicles. And then we have pickups, which are things that you can actually pick up in the game in story mode. Most of these are weapons and things like that we won't use too much of. For the most of today, we're going to be focused on objects. If we click on objects, you can see the base list here. You could just go through this. That's not too many things. Quite a lot of stuff. It's going to take a bit of time to kind of figure out what things you like and what things work the best. A couple things to keep in mind: a lot of landscaping type items like trees and bushes and some rocks don't work well in YMAPs, so be careful using those objects. For this tutorial, we're going to use a salt barrel. So we're going to type in the word salt, and it brings up anything that has the word salt in it. Starting from the bottom, we have salted beef. We have 2 of those. We have a bush called salt bush. Not sure what's up with that because I don't think salt comes from a bush. We have barrel of salt, salt shaker. Yes, salt shaker on the tables. We have salted meat group. We have barrel of salt, a couple more barrels of salt. We're just going to grab this top one right here, P_barrel salt 01X. We're actually using this in the YMAP behind us. Now, once we click on that, you can see at the bottom of our screen, now it says spawn P_barrel salt 01X. That means that that object is loaded into our spawner, and we could hit the E key to spawn it. Now we can hit the E key again and spawn a whole bunch of them because that's what's loaded in here. Now, if you need to delete anything, right click on your mouse while it's highlighted, and you can actually delete them just like that. And there you are. You have now spawned your first object. As you can see right now, we are not highlighting any objects, and we have the base menu on our view. If we go ahead and highlight an object, that menu changes, and so does the cursor color. Right now, we have a cursor of green color. That means we are highlighting an object. You can see the object's name. This is called P_barrel salt 01X. And we have a different menu. When you are highlighting an object, you can still, of course, move around like this and get out of there. But as soon as you highlight an object, you need to be really careful because now a lot of the keys on your keyboard will actually interact with that object. And sometimes when you're creating a YMAP, you might move the wrong thing on accident. So you need to be really careful what you're doing. But the controls are pretty basic. Now we can move with the arrows, we can move this object just like that. We can move the object left and right, up and down. X, Y, and Z. That's our coordinates. Then, of course, Q and Z are up and down. Q and Z. You can play around with this a little bit. Q, Z, and then the arrows to move it around. Now, as you can see, we're moving the object, but we're not actually following this object. Our cursor stays in center. Now, the problem with that is when we move too far, we actually move the object off of our cursor, and it turns white again, meaning we're not controlling it. Now, how do we fix that? While you're actually highlighted on an object, if you hit the Alt key, we are now focused on that object. You can see down below, right above our menu, it actually says focus fixed. You can actually hit Control and change that to focus free and focus fixed. Focus fixed is the best one because now we move this object, we stay with it. As you can see now, we are actually staying with the view of the object. That way you can move this object anywhere you want and you will actually stay with the object itself. Next in our menu, we're going to talk about rotate. Now there, of course, since we are in a 3-dimensional world, there are 3 axes of rotation. At their linear form, this is the X-axis, the Y-axis, and the Z-axis. It might be easier for us to show this a little larger object, so let me pull out a wagon. Okay, we have the same wagon that we have in our little shop here. Now let's pretend the easiest way to explain this is via aviation terms. If you see at the very bottom of our little description window, we have rotate. Now, if we hit the B key, that rotation axis changes. We have yaw, pitch, and roll. Yaw, pitch, and roll. Now, if we take that into consideration with an airplane, it might make more sense. To roll an airplane while you're flying through the air would be to just do a barrel roll. So we highlight this wagon while we're on roll, and then use the C and V key, we actually do a barrel roll. Now, of course, this object is rotating on wherever its axis is, so it's not really in the center of the object. Now, of course, if we were in an airplane, we'd be rotating right down the center of the airplane where the prop is. But for this, it looks like the rotation is at underneath it. So as you can see that, we're in the roll function. Now, if we change this, we have yaw. Now, yaw in an airplane is how an airplane actually just turns when on the ground. Yaw is how an airplane turns when on the ground. If we rotate this, this wagon should just literally spin. There we go. See, now we're turning when we're on the ground, just like that. And the last rotation is pitch. Pitch is how an airplane goes up and down when in the air. It's the pitch of the airplane. If we rotate that, you can see the airplane's going down into the ground, or it's climbing into the sky. We can use all three of these rotations to actually get this wagon any place and anywhere we want it to be, just like that. So play around with those so you can learn those three pitches. We have pitch, roll, and yaw. It takes a bit to get to understand exactly what they are, but if you keep in mind our airplane analogy, I think you'll get it fairly easily. And once you get the basis of moving things around, setting them where you want them, you can actually start creating some pretty cool little scenes like we have here with our little farmer's market we're creating. Now, it definitely takes some time to be able to get exactly everything that you would like to get done. And it just takes a little bit of time going back and forth and getting everything perfect. Sometimes that's the funnest part, and what takes the most time is just getting everything exactly the way you want it for your particular item. I mean, rotating everything just perfectly, getting it all set up right, sometimes takes quite a lot of time to get it all perfectly right, exactly where you want it to be. And like that, there we are. We have a scoop in our salt. Take your time, be creative, and you can create pretty much anything you like in the game. But now, how do you save it? How do you save all this stuff so it actually loads? Because right now, all we do is we have a Spooner database full of items that are actually just sitting here in a object loader type of situation. But we want to create a YMAP, so when the server starts, all of this is here in its own little map. There are two ways to save this information, and I actually advise you to do both of them, depending on what your situation is. If you want to save a project so you can come back to it and do some more changes to it, you need to save it as a Spooner database. That way you can reload your Spooner database just like this, and that will allow you to then go back into it and make some changes. If you save something as a YMAP, it is set that way, and it's a lot harder to make changes to it. To do both of these features is going to be, make sure you're not highlighted on anything, and you should see a J button, Saved Databases. If you hit the J button, it'll bring up this menu here. You want to go to the Import Export. That'll bring up your Import Export window. To save a database JSON, you want to make sure you're on Spooner Database JSON file. You want to hit Export, and that will export the information into this viewer. This is the database file information you need to save on your computer. What you do is just highlight that, hit Control A, hit Control C, bring that into some sort of text writer. This could be regular Notepad, or you could use Sublime Text like we do, free download that lets you do some pretty awesome coding. I'll leave a link to that program in the description of this video. Paste that database information into the software of your choice. Save it somewhere on your computer as a .json file. This will allow you to hold the database information so then you can later on import it if you'd like, and we'll get into that in just 1 second. Now, if you're done with your file and you want to save it as a YMAP to actually load onto your server, you want to go to the same function with the J, hit Import Export, change the drop-down to YMAP, and then hit Export. This will export the data into your viewer as a YMAP file. You just want to hit Control A, Control C to copy that information, and then drop that into your text editor of choice. At this point, you just need to save that file as anything you like as a .ymap, YMAP, and you're good to go. All YMAPs must be placed into a stream folder on your server. We've provided you one with this build. It's in My Maps. If you go to your My Maps folder and you go to the stream folder, you'll already see a Ratskeller Station YMAP we provided. If you drop your YMAPs in here, they will automatically load when the server restarts. One of the last things we're going to talk about in this tutorial is how to load in your Spooner databases so you can make changes to your YMAPs. Now, of course, you need a YMAP off to do this so you're not overlapping objects. So right now we do have our YMAP turned off. We've loaded back into our server and our little market is gone. Now, if you saved your JSON file like we advised you to do in the last part of this video, all you need to do is go to J to open up your Import Export button. Go to Import Export and you should have your viewer window. Make sure you're on Spooner DB JSON and you're going to load in the contents of that file that you saved earlier as a JSON file. All you do is go to that text editor, whatever you're using, Control A, copy that, click into the import window here, paste that information in here, and you have all that information in here. Yours may look different than mine. I have a PED inside mine. That's what this top information is here. It's quite a lot of information. You can't save that type of stuff as a YMAP, but you can load it in as a JSON to mess around with some stuff. All you do now is you just hit import, and it should load all this stuff in right here on our map. Now, this is not a YMAP. It is still a Spooner JSON file, so we can edit it, we can move it around, we can resave it, we can add stuff to it. But if we go to our database button, which is X, we can now see that all this stuff is in our database, and we can manipulate it and then resave it as a JSON file for later use, or we could resave it as a YMAP with any changes that we made. To finish off this video, we're just going to go over a couple things to check on your YMAPs before you finalize them and put them on your server. One of the main things you want to make sure on your YMAP is that nothing got lost while you were spawning it in. Sometimes you spawn something in, if you don't see it, it might have dropped underneath the map. Make sure to hit your X, go to your database, maybe delete that last item you dropped, because if you drop a lot of things under the map, they will default usually at 000. That causes lots of issues on your worlds. If you have a lot of items just sitting in 000, that's attached to a YMAP that's in Armadillo. So one good rule of thumb is to make sure that this line in each one of these objects has nothing at 000. You could do that a couple different ways. Easiest way to do it in Sublime Text is just to highlight X equals quotation marks, hit Control F. We can actually go down here and put a 0 there, and that will look for anything that has X equals 0. As you can see, we have some rotation stuff like that, but we can go through find and make sure there's nothing in the position that has that. We also actually could highlight all of this right here, just like that, add a 0 on there. So now we're looking for position X equals quote 0. If we look for find, hit find a few times, we find nothing. That means there's no object that currently has anything that's at 000. Using this feature of Sublime Text, you also want to search for value equals quote 500 and actually hit Control H because we want to change these values. As you can see, we just highlighted all of those values. You want to change those to value equals quote 100. The reason for this is the viewing distance and load distance of your YMAP. By default, Spooner puts everything at 500, and that's a fairly large area to have this YMAP loaded into, especially if it's a small little market like we created. Changing this to 100 helps eliminate any overlaps with multiple YMAPs around each other, and it just helps clutter. So I recommend changing those all to 100 for most YMAPs. Unless, of course, your YMAP is very large, you may need to adjust this. Like I believe on DRB for our racetrack YMAP, this definitely isn't at 100 because the horse racetrack is larger than that, so we have to adjust that. And then for any interior YMAPs where the YMAP only needs to load while you're inside that interior, you could also change this to even smaller to like a 50. But definitely keep those two things in mind while you're going through and making YMAPs so you can make some great, exciting things for your world as well as others. Now, of course, like we mentioned, you can't keep this PED in your actual YMAP, but if you'd like to have PEDs like this in your YMAP spawned when your world loads, definitely make sure to like this video and make sure you're subscribed for future videos as we will be going over how to code that in your own server. Before we end the video, I wanted to give you 2 more tips. So you're aware, you cannot load any YMAPs in an already developed interior inside the game. These 2 maps will conflict with each other and your YMAP will be invisible. There are other features you can use to load objects inside interiors, and we can get into that in a future video. This issue does not cause a problem with interiors that you create with Spooner. Also, make sure when you are saving your files in the import-export function to clear out any resident values inside that window before you hit export so you don't duplicate any information. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the DRB Studios channel for more videos on games, tech, and coding. I'm Austin BMX with DRB Studios, bringing ideas to life. Hope to see you again soon, but until then, keep on creating.